turned around that night, I never would have seen her dancing alone, Aluna, in the middle of the temple courtyard. Her white kabaya glowing faintly under the moonlight, her feet barefoot on the stone, her eyes closed as if she was listening to a melody I couldn't hear. But the thing is, Aluna had been dead for 3 days. Everyone in the village knew. A sudden fever, 3 sleepless nights, a breath that stopped before dawn. Her family held a private cremation because they said her soul was unsettled. That's the word they used, unsettled. But tonight she was dancing. I stood behind a frangipani tree, breath stuck in my throat, not out of fear, but confusion. Her movements were so graceful, so alive. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was still human. And then she opened her eyes and looked right at me. That's when I realized I wasn't supposed to see her. If I hadn't turned around that night, I never would have seen her dancing alone, Aluna, in the middle of the temple courtyard. Her white kabaya glowing faintly under the moonlight, her feet barefoot on the stone, her eyes closed as if she was listening to a melody I couldn't hear. But the thing is, Aluna had been dead for 3 days. Everyone in the village knew. A sudden fever, 3 sleepless nights, a breath that stopped before dawn. Her family held a private cremation because they said her soul was unsettled. That's the word they used, unsettled. But tonight she was dancing. I stood behind a frangipani tree, breath stuck in my throat, not out of fear, but confusion. Her movements were so graceful, so alive. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was still human. And then she opened her eyes and looked right at me. That's when I realized I wasn't supposed to see her. Help with what? By morning, I had made a decision. I had to tell Raka. Raka had always been the kind of person who believed in things most people ignored. He was calm, quiet, and had this strange ability to make you feel safe, even when the world wasn't. He didn't laugh when I told him about Aluna. He just nodded. Are you sure it was her? Yes. And you're sure she looked at you? I nodded. Raki sighed deeply, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A folded piece of black cloth. Inside it, a tiny bell made of bone. Put this in your pocket, he said. If you ever see her again, and she starts moving toward you, ring it once. Only once. I stared at the bell. What will it do? Either wake you up, he said, or pull her away. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I returned to the temple once again, got no footprints this time. No flowers. No Aluna. But as I turned to leave, I heard something strange footsteps, not behind me, not beside me, but above me, I looked up, and on the rooftop of the temple's outer wall was a man, dressed in all white, eyes closed, hands moving slowly in the air, like he was dancing too, but there was no music. He didn't speak, he didn't stop, he just danced, and suddenly, I realized I wasn't the only one who had seen her. The man in white moved as if in trance, his feet never making a sound, his gestures exact, deliberate. But when I tried to call out to him, he vanished, not walked away, not ran, just gone. The next morning, I visited the temple again. This time in daylight, everything looked ordinary. There were flowers arranged in little Kanang sari baskets, incense sticks, scattered petals. The smell of sandalwood lingered, but something was off. Near the Baal pavilion, I saw a small offering that hadn't been placed with the others. It sat on a stone by itself, wrapped in red cloth and tied with a black string. I don't know what compelled me, but I stepped closer. Inside the offering was something I'd never seen before. A lock of long black hair, tied with gold thread, and a single fingernail. I staggered back. Suddenly, the air turned heavy. Behind me. Someone whispered, that offering is not for you." I turned. No one was there, but the red cloth was gone. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I had my first real nightmare. Aluna was standing in the middle of the courtyard again, but this time, her face was covered in ashes. Her arms dangled by her sides, and she wasn't dancing. She was floating, and behind her, a dozen other figures stood motionless in the dark, their mouths wide open. But no sound came out, except for one sentence, echoing all around me. "You opened the way." I woke up gasping for air. My room felt cold, even though the windows were shut. The bell Raka gave me had fallen to the floor. That morning, I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. But things started to change when I went to wash my face. My mirror fogged up by itself, and on the glass, written in that same fog, were the words, "She's still here." I ran to Raka's house, told him everything. He didn't look surprised, only worried. "Did you touch anything at the temple?" he asked. I hesitated. I looked inside an offering. Raka closed his eyes. Then the line has been crossed. He opened a drawer and took out a worn, old book. Inside were hand-drawn sketches of old rituals, strange symbols, and notes written in Balinese script. There's something called the Tari, Bayangan, the shadow dance. It was performed when a soul was stuck between realms. Like Aluna? He nodded. And whoever witnesses that dance becomes part of it. My skin turned cold. Part of it how? I asked Dot. He flipped to a page showing a dancer surrounded by shadows. Underneath it, the witness carries the memory. The dancer waits for release. I looked at Raka. He looked back at me and said, "She's waiting for you to finish the dance." That sentence kept echoing in my head. I didn't know how to dance. I'd never been trained. But I kept seeing the same movements in my dreams. Hands floating, wrists turning inward, feet gliding slowly across stone. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I stepped into the courtyard, barefoot. I brought nothing with me except the bell and a red scarf. I'd tied around my waist one that looked like Aluna's. The moon was high. The air was completely still. And somehow, my body began to move on its own. Each gesture came naturally. My fingers curled in the exact rhythm I'd seen in my dreams. My spine arched, my feet slid forward. It felt like something or someone was guiding me. I felt cold wind spiral around my body. And then, I wasn't alone. Across the courtyard stood Aluna. She mirrored my movements, step for step, turn for turn. Then, without a sound, she mouthed one word, "Finish." But before I could, a loud crack shattered the silence. A branch from the frangipani tree split and fell right between us. Luna disappeared in a burst of petals. And in her place stood the man in white. He looked straight at me. And this time he spoke. "If you don't finish what she started, you'll never wake up again." Those words from the man in white felt more like a command than a warning. And suddenly, everything made sense. The footprints, the offerings, the mirror. I wasn't being haunted. I was being summoned to finish a dance that had started long before I ever stepped into that courtyard. That night, Raka came to me with something unexpected, a ritual invitation. An ancient ceremony only performed every 7 years. Tari Sangyan Bidari, the sacred trance dance meant to purify a village from unseen disturbances. "This year, it will be different," he said. "The priest asked for your presence." "But I'm not a dancer," I argued. Raka looked at me long and deep. "You are now." Asterisk, asterisk. The night of the Sangyang, everything felt surreal. The villagers had no idea what I had seen. They only knew my face had changed in recent days. My eyes, my energy. Some whispered I had been chosen. I didn't correct them. Candles lined the temple path. Gamelan echoed like ancient chants. When it was my turn to enter the courtyard, I was barefoot, wrapped in white, a crown of frangipani. On my head and in my hand, a single red scarf. I stepped into the circle of dancers. The music began, and my body, once again, moved on its own. But this time, something felt different. The moment I turned toward the temple gates, I saw Aluna, not in spirit, but walking into the circle. Alive, dressed like me, eyes full of light. And then, the world turned upside down. Aluna stepped into the circle, but it wasn't her. I felt it immediately something was wrong. The moment she began to move, the air dropped several degrees. The dancers around me stumbled. One even collapsed. Her eyes were glowing faintly, not with warmth, but with fire. Her movements were sharp, jerky like she was being controlled. The priest shouted something in Balinese. I didn't understand all of it, but I caught the words, "Wrong soul. She shouldn't be here." A wave of panic spread through the temple. Aluna turned to face me mid-dance and screamed not with her voice, but with a voice that came from far beneath the earth. "You opened the door. Now dance until it closes." I dropped to my knees. Everything around me blurred music, voices, even the flames. I reached for the bell Raka had given me, but it was gone. And in its place, clenched in my palm, was the red scarf. Aluna's scarf, the real one, torn, burned, still warm. I didn't faint, but I wasn't fully conscious. Either. It was as if I had slipped into a third space, not life, not death. The world faded into grayscale. Only two colors remained, the red of Aluna's scarf and the white of the man who now stood beside me. He didn't speak. Instead, he lifted his hand and pointed behind me. I turned. I saw a mirror, tall and ancient, floating above the ground. Inside it me, dancing, but with a different expression. One I didn't recognize. It was me, if I never left. If I stayed lost in the ritual forever. I turned back to him. How do I stop this? He finally spoke. You don't stop it. You choose how it ends. Asterisk, asterisk, I awoke on the temple floor. It was already dawn. The dancers were gone. The crowd had disappeared. The priest sat in silence. Only Raka remained beside me. You danced for 6 hours, he whispered, without stopping. I looked around. Aluna was gone, and I didn't know if that meant she was saved or lost forever. The days that followed were filled with silence, not just around me, but inside me. I felt like my soul had been stretched thin, like my body was here, but my spirit was still dancing somewhere between the stones of the temple. Rika took me to an old healer, a woman nearly blind, but with a voice that seemed to cut through air. She's not done with you, she said. Not until you understand why she danced in the first place. What do you mean? I asked. The old woman placed her hand over my heart. Sometimes the dead don't want release. Sometimes they want to be remembered. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I dreamt again, but not of the temple. This time, I was standing in Aluna's childhood room. There were drawings on the wall, little scribbles of girls in white dancing under stars. And in the corner, a diary. I opened it. The first page read, "If I die young, let them know. I was dancing for my sister, not for myself." Asterisk, asterisk, I woke up with tears in my eyes. Aluna hadn't been trapped. She had been trying to finish someone else's story, and now I had to finish hers. But I didn't know how the dreams started to change. No longer visions, they became memories. Not mine. Aluna's. I saw her walking through the same temple courtyard years ago. She was younger, smiling. Beside her was a girl with the same eyes. Slightly shorter, her sister god. They danced together. But in one dream, her sister fell, hit her head on stone. Everything turned black. Aluna screamed, but no one heard. And in the silence, I saw the same frangipani tree, its leaves turning gray. When I woke, I understood. Aluna had lost her sister there. She'd been dancing ever since to bring her back. But instead of rescuing her sister, she had gotten trapped in the memory, in the rhythm. Raka and I returned to the temple, hoping for answers. But the priest refused to let us in. She belongs to the stone. Now, he said, if you call her again, she may not come alone. But I had no choice. That night, I returned anyway, not alone that the gates were unlocked. But the temple wasn't empty, that there were no lights, no wind, just rows and rows of small, shadowy figures all. Of them girls, they stood still, staring Dot, and in the middle, with her back to me, was Aluna. Aluna stood still, her long hair swaying gently. Though there was no wind, I stepped forward, slowly. My feet made no sound on the stones. Aluna, I whispered. Dot, she didn't turn. I tried again. Aluna, I know about your sister. At that, her body trembled. The other girls, the shadows, began to sway, as if caught in a slow tide, their mouths still closed, their eyes blank. But Aluna finally turned to face me, and I saw something new in her face. Not sorrow, not anger. Shame. Double quotes. She followed me, Aluna whispered. I told her not to, but she wanted to dance too. I nodded. You didn't cause it, but I couldn't let her go alone, she said. So I danced to keep her company. And then I asked the question I had feared the most. Why me, Aluna? Why did you choose me to see you? She looked straight into my soul. Because you listened. Suddenly, the shadows began to move faster. Their forms wavered. Aluna turned to me in panic. They're waking. They've been here too long. You have to finish it now. How? Her eyes filled with tears. Dance with me one last time. But this time, let me go. We began to dance. Not with music, not with steps I remembered, but with instinct. Every movement I made, Aluna echoed. We spun in circles, arms wide, eyes open. The shadow girls began to slow. And watch, Aluna smiled. Faster, she said. Let the rhythm carry me away. My heart pounded, my legs ached, but I didn't stop. I moved until I couldn't feel the stone beneath my feet, until everything became light. And then, for the first time, Aluna began to vanish. Bit by bit, like smoke fading under morning sun. No, I cried out. She smiled gently. This was always the end. Not for me, but for you. What do you mean? You've been carrying all of us, she said. Now, it's time to carry yourself. And with one final spin, her hand slipped from mine. The scarf dropped to the ground, and she was gone. The temple was silent. Empty. Even the shadows were gone. I dropped to my knees, breathless. My chest ached not from exhaustion, but from the weight of goodbye. Raka found me before sunrise. You did it, he said. No, I whispered. She did. I just danced beside her. We burned the scarf that morning, not as a curse, but as an offering. The smoke curled into the sky like a final message. She is free, but something strange happened as the scarf turned to ash. The air filled with a scent sweet, familiar. Frangipa, and in that moment, I understood. Aluna's sister wasn't trapped. She had never been Dot. It was Aluna who couldn't forgive herself. But now, she had. She had forgiven herself. And I knew it the moment I saw the white gate. It stood at the far end of the temple compound, half hidden by overgrown vines so old I had passed it a dozen times without noticing. But now, It glowed faintly in the morning light. Raka and I approached it in silence. "What is this place?" I asked. Raka looked at it carefully. "The gate between two realms. It only opens when someone's journey is finished." I reached out to touch it. It was warm, and I heard a voice, not spoken, but felt like a breeze brushing through my ribs. "Thank you." Not from Aluna, but from all the voices I'd carried. All the eyes that had watched me dance. All the shadows that no longer lingered. Raka placed his hand on my shoulder. "You helped her go home?" "No," I said, closing my eyes. "She helped me find mine." I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not the full story. But word spread anyway, about a strange night at the temple. About a dancer who moved like a spirit. About a quiet boy who had changed since the ceremony. Some said I was touched by the gods. Some whispered I had been possessed. I ignored them all. Instead, I wrote everything down. In a small leather notebook. Every moment, every dream, every step of the dance. Not for anyone else, just to remember. Because I was afraid that one day I might forget what Aluna gave me. But a week later, the notebook disappeared. I searched everywhere. Asked Raka. Asked my mother. No one had seen it. I thought maybe I left it at the temple. But deep inside, I felt something else. As if someone had taken it for a reason. That to carry the story further, to pass it on. Asterisk, asterisk. And one morning, outside my window, I found a frangipani flower, with one word carved faintly on its petal, Lev. The rain came the next day, hard, relentless. But when I stepped outside, not a single drop landed on my skin. It was as if something was shielding me. Not physically, but spiritually. As if the storm respected what I had been through. I walked through the village, through the temple road, past the now quiet courtyard, and I felt at peace. Not because the danger was over, but because the fear was. I was no longer haunted. I was no longer searching. I no longer needed the scarf, or the bell, or the signs, because now I understood. The dance was never about ghosts. It was always about letting go. And I finally had. I had let go, but some things never truly leave. A week after the rain, someone emailed me. The subject line said only, "Do you know this book?" Attached was a photo of a notebook. My notebook. I blinked. My heart, STUTTERED. It was sitting on a stone bench next to a frangipani tree. The leather cover slightly cracked, the corners folded. My handwriting unmistakable, but there was something new. On the last page, written in a soft, slanted hand that wasn't mine, were these words: "Story isn't over, because someone is still dancing, even after we stop." I didn't know what to think. Who had the book? Why write that? Why send it to me? I responded. Just one line. "Who are you?" No reply. Just silence. But that night, I dreamt again. This time, not of Aluna, not of the temple, but of someone else. A woman sitting in the middle of a circle of frangipani trees, her face hidden in the mist, writing in a notebook that looked exactly like mine. And when she looked up, I recognized her, even though I'd never met her before. And I heard a voice, not hers, not mine, but one that filled the space between us. "Your story will find the ones who need it." That sentence wouldn't leave me. Who is reading it now? That question kept circling my mind as I stared at the laptop screen. There was no name, no trace, just the photo of the book, and a handwritten message I didn't recognize. This story isn't over, because someone is still dancing, even after we stop. The writing, gentle, familiar, looked like Aluna's. But how could that be? She was gone. She had passed through the white gate. Her scarf had burned. Her dance had ended. Still, in a world where spirits speak through dreams, where messages arrive through flowers, What's truly impossible? I typed a reply. Who are you? And why do you have my book? I hit send. No response. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I dreamt again. I walked through the trees. Golden light spilled between branches. At the center of a clearing, someone waited. Not Aluna, a woman with long black hair, wearing white. She held the notebook in her hands, writing slowly. When she looked up, she smiled. And even though we'd never met, I knew she was part of this story. She handed me the book and whispered, "The dance is over, but the story continues. Now it's your turn to live." I woke up. And on my desk where I had left nothing was the notebook. Back, intact. Real. And on the last page, "Don't worry, this will reach those who need it. Now go and live." And that's what I did. On the next full moon, I returned to Bali, not because of a dream, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. This time, I didn't come searching for Aluna or spirits. I came to dance for myself. The temple stood quiet, the courtyard empty, the frangipani tree still shedding blossoms like soft tears. I wore a new outfit, one I chose. A red scarf, not Aluna's, but mine. My steps were not guided by memory, but by intention. I danced, not to summon spirits, not to finish a story, but to honor what I'd learned. With each movement, I let go. Of fear, of guilt, of the past. And when I opened my eyes at the final step, I saw them, not spirits, but peace. Aluna, watching from the trees, smiling, and behind her shadows no longer. Just light. She bowed. Then turned away. Asterisk, asterisk, I finished my dance. Alone. But no longer afraid, because I wasn't dancing for ghosts. I was dancing for myself, and for the life I was finally ready to live.